Lisa Martinez never imagined that rolling up her sleeve to donate blood would completely transform her life. What started as a simple act of kindness during a routine day at work spiraled into a series of events that would challenge everything she believed about fairness, sacrifice, and destiny. By the end of this story, 10 black SUVs would line her street, and a check with more zeros than she could count would be placed in her trembling hands. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly overhead as Lisa Martinez adjusted the orange safety vest that had become her second skin. At 28, she had perfected the art of making ends meet through a patchwork of part-time jobs that barely kept her afloat. 3 mornings a week, she stood at the crosswalk outside Sunnydale Elementary School, helping children safely navigate the busy intersection. The other days, she worked at Riverside Community Blood Bank, a small facility tucked between a laundromat and a taco shop in downtown Phoenix. Lisa had grown accustomed to the rhythm of her modest life. Her cramped studio apartment might have peeling paint and a temperamental air conditioner, but it was hers. She had learned to find joy in small moments, the smile of a child she helped cross the street, the grateful nod from blood donors, the satisfaction of knowing her work mattered even if her bank account suggested otherwise. That Tuesday morning felt no different from any other. The desert air shimmered with heat waves as children streamed toward the school building, their backpacks bouncing with each eager step. Lisa raised her stop sign as a group of third graders approached, their chatter filling the air with innocent energy. Among them was Tommy Chun, a quiet boy with kind eyes who always waved at her with genuine enthusiasm. "Good morning, Miss Lisa," Tommy called out, his voice bright with the kind of optimism that only children possess. "Morning, sweetheart." "Have a wonderful day at school," she replied, watching as he hurried toward the building with his classmates. Tommy had been crossing at her station for 2 years now, and Lisa had watched him grow from a shy kindergartner into a confident third grader. His father occasionally picked him up after school, a well-dressed man who drove a modest sedan and spoke softly to his son. Lisa had never thought much about their family circumstances. In her line of work, she encountered people from all walks of life, and she had learned not to make assumptions. After the morning rush subsided, Lisa drove her aging Honda Civic across town to the blood bank. The familiar scent of antiseptic and the gentle hum of refrigeration units greeted her as she pushed through the glass doors. Riverside Community Blood Bank was a humble operation compared to the larger medical facilities in Phoenix, but it served a vital role in the community. They supplied blood to smaller hospitals and clinics that couldn't afford the premium rates charged by corporate blood centers. "Lisa, thank goodness you're here," called out Janet Morrison, the facility's director, her voice tinged with the weariness that came from years of fighting bureaucratic battles. "We're critically low on O-negative again, and Desert Valley Medical Center just called with an emergency request." Lisa hung her purse in the small staff locker and washed her hands methodically. "How much do they need?" 2 units, and they need them within the hour. We've called our regular donors, but you know how it is during summer. Everyone's either out of town or dealing with the heat. O-negative blood, often called the universal donor type, was always in short supply. Lisa had witnessed the quiet desperation that accompanied blood shortages, the hushed phone calls to other facilities, the careful rationing of existing supplies, the heartbreaking decisions about which patients received priority. It was a reality that most people never considered until they found themselves on the wrong side of a medical emergency. Lisa glanced at the blood bank's modest inventory displayed on the whiteboard behind Janet's desk. The numbers told a stark story of need outpacing supply. She had donated blood herself just 8 weeks ago, making her eligible to donate again according to medical guidelines. "I'll call more donors," Lisa offered, already reaching for the phone. Janet shook her head grimly. I've tried everyone. On our emergency list, Mrs. Patterson is recovering from surgery. Miguel is traveling for work, and the Johnson family is dealing with their own medical issues. The Red Cross facility across town might have some, but their delivery truck is stuck in traffic, and we're talking about a child's life here. The weight of those words settled in the small room like desert heat. Somewhere in the city, a child was fighting for their life, and the simple act of blood donation could mean the difference between tragedy and triumph. Lisa had seen enough medical emergencies during her time at the blood bank to understand the urgency that accompanied such requests. She made a decision that felt as natural as breathing. Check my records. When was my last donation? Janet's fingers flew across the computer keyboard, her reading glasses perched precariously on the edge of her nose. 8 weeks and 2 days ago. You're eligible, but Lisa, you're scheduled to work until 5 today, and donating might leave you feeling weak in this heat. Lisa was already moving toward the donation chair, her mind made up. She had never hesitated when it came to helping others, whether it was ensuring a child's safe passage across a busy street or providing the gift of life through blood donation. Her grandmother had taught her that kindness was never wasted, even when the recipient was a stranger. A child needs blood, and I have blood to give, she said simply, settling into the familiar chair where countless donors had made similar sacrifices. Everything else can wait. Janet's expression softened with a mixture of admiration and concern. She had worked with volunteers and part-time staff for 15 years, but Lisa's unwavering commitment to helping others never ceased to amaze her. In a world that often seemed increasingly self-centered, Lisa represented something pure and hopeful. The donation process began with the familiar ritual of paperwork and preliminary checks. Lisa's iron levels were excellent, her blood pressure stable, and her heart rate steady despite the circumstances. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Janet prepared the needle and collection bag, Lisa closed her eyes and thought about the unknown child whose life hung in the balance. Tell me about the emergency, Lisa said, watching as the crimson flow began filling the collection bag. Janet consulted the medical request form that had been faxed from Desert Valley Medical Center. 8-year-old boy, severe anemia complicated by internal bleeding. He collapsed during a school field day event, and his blood count is dangerously low. They need to stabilize him before they can determine the underlying cause. Lisa's heart constricted. An 8-year-old boy, the same age as many of the children she helped cross the street each morning. Somewhere in the city, parents were probably pacing hospital corridors, their world turned upside down by a medical crisis they never saw coming. She squeezed her eyes shut tighter, silently willing her blood to flow faster. The collection process typically took 8 to 10 minutes, but today each second felt like an eternity. Lisa found herself thinking about her own childhood, remembering the comfort of her mother's presence during her few hospital visits for minor injuries. She wondered if this boy had someone holding his hand, whispering reassurances as medical professionals worked to save his life. Almost done, Janet murmured, monitoring the collection bag as it approached the required volume. Lisa, I want you to know that what you're doing today, this kind of immediate response to help a stranger, it's remarkable. Most people would hesitate, find excuses, worry about the inconvenience. Lisa opened her eyes and smiled weakly. My grandmother used to say that we're all connected by invisible threads. When someone pulls on one end, we all feel it. Today, someone pulled on mine. When the donation was complete, Janet carefully labeled the blood bag and prepared it for immediate transport. The bright red liquid that had flowed through Lisa's veins just moments before would soon provide life-saving support to a child she had never met. She felt slightly lightheaded but deeply satisfied. the way she always did after donating blood. Rest for at least 15 minutes, Janet instructed, offering Lisa a juice box and a package of crackers. I'm calling Desert Valley now to let them know we have what they need. Lisa sank back into the recovery chair, sipping orange juice, and watching Janet coordinate the emergency delivery. Through the blood bank's small window, she could see the desert landscape shimmering in the afternoon heat. Somewhere out there, an ambulance or medical courier was preparing to race across the city, carrying her blood toward an uncertain destiny. She never could have imagined that this simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her life. In a few hours, she would learn the identity of the child she had helped save. In a few days, her modest apartment would be surrounded by luxury vehicles that belonged in a different world. Entirely. And in a few weeks she would find herself at the center of a transformation so profound that it would challenge everything she thought she knew about fate, generosity, and the mysterious ways that lives intersect. But for now, Lisa simply sat in the recovery chair, feeling grateful that she could help save a life and wondering if the little boy would pull through. She had no way of knowing that across town, in a hospital room where money was no object and the best medical care in the state was being deployed, Tommy Chun was fighting for his life while his father made frantic phone calls to medical specialists around the world. The invisible thread that connected them had been pulled, and nothing would ever be the same. Part 2. When rules clash with compassion. The emergency call came in just as Lisa was finishing her recovery period at the blood bank. Janet's phone rang with the sharp urgency that hospital calls always carried, and Lisa watched her supervisor's face transform from relief to concern as she listened to the voice on the other end. What do you mean you can't accept the donation? Janet's voice rose an octave, drawing Lisa's attention from her crackers and juice. We have exactly what you requested, fresh O-negative blood from a healthy donor, properly screened and ready for immediate use. Lisa set down her juice box, a cold knot forming in her stomach. She had donated blood dozens of times over the years, and the process was typically straightforward once the medical need was established. The urgency in Janet's voice suggested something had gone terribly wrong. I understand your protocols, Dr. Williams, but we're talking about a child's life. Janet continued, her knuckles white as she gripped the phone. The blood is perfect, the donor is healthy, and your patient is running out of time. Dr. Patricia Williams' voice carried clearly through the phone speaker, her tone clinical and unmoved. Ms. Morrison, I've explained this twice already. The blood you're offering comes from Riverside Community Blood Bank, which is not on our approved vendor list. Our hospital policy requires all blood products to come from certified facilities that meet our specific accreditation standards. Lisa's heart sank as she processed the doctor's words. She knew that Desert Valley Medical Center was one of Phoenix's most prestigious hospitals, catering to wealthy patients who expected premium care. The fact that they were rejecting perfectly good blood because of bureaucratic red tape was both infuriating and heartbreaking. Dr. Williams, Janet said, her voice strained with desperation. The child is 8 years old. The blood is identical to what you would receive from any other facility. Every safety protocol has been followed, every test completed. The only difference is the name on our building. I sympathize with the situation, but I cannot authorize the use of blood from an uncertified facility. If something went wrong, the hospital could face enormous liability issues. We have protocols for a reason, Ms. Morrison. I suggest you contact one of our approved vendors. Lisa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. The lightheadedness from the donation was nothing compared to the crushing weight of what she was hearing. Somewhere in this city, an 8-year-old boy was fighting for his life while adults argued about paperwork and liability concerns. Tell her I'll deliver it personally, Lisa said, her voice carrying a determination that surprised even her. Tell her I'll sign whatever waiver they need, Take full responsibility for the donation." Janet covered the phone's mouthpiece and stared at Lisa with wide eyes. "Honey, that's not how this works. You can't just walk into a hospital and demand. They use your blood. There are systems in place, legal requirements. Then the system is broken." Lisa interrupted, her voice rising with passion. "I don't care about their approved vendor lists or their liability concerns. That little boy doesn't have time for bureaucracy." Janet returned to her conversation with Dr. Williams, explaining Lisa's offer to personally deliver the blood and assume responsibility. The doctor's response was swift and dismissive. "Absolutely not. That would be completely inappropriate and potentially dangerous. The hospital cannot accept blood donations outside of established protocols, regardless of the donor's intentions." Lisa grabbed the bag containing her blood from the preparation counter, holding it up to the light. The deep red liquid seemed to glow with possibility, with the power to save a life that was slipping away while administrators worried about paperwork. She had given part of herself to help a stranger, and now that gift was being rejected because of institutional politics. What if I took it there myself? Lisa asked, her mind racing with desperate possibilities. Not as an official donation, but as someone who wants to help. They can test it again, verify everything, but at least it would be available if they change their minds. Janet's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Lisa, you can't just show up at a hospital with a bag of blood. Security would stop you before you reach the lobby. Besides, even if you somehow got past them, no doctor would use unlicensed blood products. You could be arrested for interfering with medical care." Dr. Williams' voice continued to drone through the phone speaker, explaining liability issues and accreditation requirements with the detached professionalism of someone who had never watched a child struggle for breath. Lisa felt her frustration building like pressure in a tea kettle, threatening to explode. "So we just let him die?" Lisa asked, her voice breaking slightly. "We have exactly what he needs, sitting right here, and we let him die because our building doesn't have the right paperwork on the wall?" Janet finished her call with Dr. Williams and turned to face Lisa, her own frustration evident in the tight lines around her eyes. "I've been fighting these battles for 15 years, honey. The big hospitals see us as second class, unreliable, potentially dangerous. They'd rather let patients suffer than risk their precious reputations." Lisa paced the small room like a caged animal, her mind churning with desperate scenarios. She thought about Tommy Chun, who waved at her every morning with such innocent trust. She thought about all the children she helped cross the street, their lives full of promise and potential. Somewhere in this city, another child was facing a medical crisis that could be solved with something as simple as a blood transfusion. But institutional prejudice was standing in the way. "What other options do we have?" Lisa demanded. "There has to be another hospital, another doctor, someone who cares more about saving lives than protecting their liability insurance." Janet consulted her emergency contact list, running her finger down the page as she mentally calculated distances and possibilities. Phoenix General might take it, but they're on the other side of town, and the traffic this time of day. By the time we got there and they processed the paperwork, it could be too late. "What about going directly to the child's family?" Lisa suggested, grasping at straws. "Maybe they could demand that the hospital use the blood, override the doctor's decision somehow. Even if we could locate them, families don't have that kind of authority in medical emergencies. The attending physician makes all decisions about treatment protocols." Lisa felt the walls closing in around her, the helplessness of the situation threatening to overwhelm her completely. She had done everything right, donated blood promptly, followed all safety protocols, even offered to take personal responsibility for the donation. Yet none of it mattered because of institutional policies that prioritized paperwork over human lives. The phone rang again, and Janet answered with weary resignation. This time, the voice on the other end belonged to a nurse at Desert Valley Medical Center. and her tone carried a desperation that cut through the bureaucratic nonsense like a knife. "This is Rachel Johnson from the pediatric ICU," the voice said, slightly breathless. "I understand you have O-negative blood available for Tommy Chun. I'm calling because I'm watching this little boy's numbers drop, and Dr. Williams is still trying to locate an approved vendor. I'm not supposed to be making this call, but I thought you should know that we're running out of time." Lisa's heart clenched at the confirmation that the boy in question was indeed Tommy, the same sweet child she saw every morning, whose father picked him up after school in that modest sedan. The coincidence felt like a cruel twist of fate, as if the universe was testing her commitment to helping others by putting a familiar face on the crisis. Janet glanced at Lisa before responding to the nurse. "We have the blood ready for immediate delivery. The donor is healthy, all tests are complete, and we can have it there in 20 minutes. What's stopping Dr. Williams from accepting it?" "Hospital policy," Rachel replied, her voice heavy with frustration. "She's worried about accreditation issues, liability concerns, all the usual bureaucratic garbage." Meanwhile, this little boy's parents are sitting in the waiting room, trusting us to save their son's life. Lisa couldn't stand it anymore. The image of Tommy's parents, probably the quiet man she'd seen picking him up from school, and a mother she'd never met sitting helplessly in a hospital waiting room while their child's life hung in the balance, was more than she could bear. "Let me talk to her," Lisa said, reaching for the phone. Janet hesitated, but the desperation in Lisa's eyes convinced her to hand over the receiver. "Rachel, this is Lisa Martinez, the blood donor. I need you to listen carefully, because I'm about to make an offer that might sound crazy, but could save Tommy's life." "I'm listening," Rachel replied, her voice cautious but hopeful. "I'm coming to the hospital," Lisa announced, ignoring Janet's alarmed expression. "I'm bringing the blood with me, and I'm going to find a way to get it to Tommy, with or without Dr. Williams' approval. That little boy waves at me every morning when I help him cross the street. I'm not going to let him die because of paperwork. Miss Martinez, I appreciate your intentions, but there's no way Dr. Williams will change her mind. She's already made it clear that using your blood would violate hospital policy." "Then I'll find another way," Lisa said with fierce determination. "I'll talk to his parents, contact the media, call every medical professional in Phoenix until someone listens to reason. I gave my blood to save Tommy's life, and I'm not giving up just because one doctor is more worried about her career than a child's survival." Rachel was quiet for a long moment, and Lisa could hear the steady beeping of medical equipment in the background, each sound a reminder of Tommy's precarious condition. When the nurse finally spoke, her voice carried a new resolve. "There might be another option," Rachel said quietly. "Dr. Martinez, no relation to you, is a pediatric specialist who's been consulting on Tommy's case. He's not technically employed by our hospital, so he might be willing to bend the rules if it means saving a child's life. But he'd need to examine the blood himself, verify its safety, and take full medical responsibility for using it." Lisa felt a surge of hope, the first genuine optimism she'd experienced since Janet's phone started ringing. "Where can I find this Dr. Martinez? How quickly can we make this happen?" "He's currently in surgery, but I could page him as soon as he's available. The thing is, you'd need to be here with the blood, ready to meet with him immediately. And you'd need to understand that if he decides the risk is too great, or if Dr. Williams finds out what we're doing, this could end very badly for everyone involved." Lisa looked at Janet, who was shaking her head with a mixture of admiration and terror. Breaking hospital protocols was serious business, potentially career-ending for the medical professionals involved and legally problematic for Lisa herself. But the alternative, letting Tommy die while perfectly good blood sat unused in a refrigerator, was unthinkable. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Lisa said without hesitation. "Have Dr. Martinez paged the moment he's out of surgery. Tell him that a child's life depends on his willingness to think outside the bureaucratic box. After ending the call, Lisa turned to Janet with determination blazing in her eyes. "I need that blood, properly packed and ready for transport. I know this is crazy, but I can't just sit here knowing that Tommy is dying while we have what he needs." Janet stared at her for a long moment, then walked to the medical refrigerator and began preparing the blood for transport. "You realize that if this goes wrong, you could face serious legal consequences. Interfering with medical care. Practicing medicine without a license, the charges could be severe. And if I do nothing, a little boy dies," Lisa replied simply. "I can live with legal consequences. I can't live with knowing I had the power to save Tommy's life and chose bureaucracy over compassion." As Janet packed the blood in a medical transport container, Lisa felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. She was about to walk into one of Phoenix's most prestigious hospitals and demand that they use her blood to save Tommy's life, regardless of their policies or protocols. It was reckless, potentially dangerous, and completely against everything she'd been taught about how the medical system worked. But sometimes Lisa thought as she grabbed her car keys and headed for the door, the system needed someone willing to break the rules for all the right reasons. Tommy Chun was counting on it, even if he didn't know it yet. Part 3. The Price of Doing Right. The parking garage at Desert Valley Medical Center felt like a concrete tomb as Lisa sat in her Honda Civic, the medical transport container containing her blood resting on the passenger seat. Through the windshield, she could see the imposing glass facade of the hospital, its modern architecture gleaming in the late afternoon sun like a fortress built to keep ordinary people at bay. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked her phone. For the third time in 10 minutes, Rachel had promised to text her the moment Dr. Martinez finished his surgery, but each passing minute felt like an eternity. Somewhere in the building before her, Tommy Chun was fighting for his life while she sat paralyzed by the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. The elevator ride to the pediatric intensive care unit felt like ascending through layers of increasingly rarefied air. Lisa clutched the transport container against her chest, acutely aware that she was carrying something that could either save a life or destroy her own future. The antiseptic smell of the hospital brought back memories of her grandmother's final days when she had learned firsthand how institutions could be both miraculous and merciless. The PICU waiting area was a study in controlled desperation. Families clustered around uncomfortable chairs, their faces etched with the kind of exhaustion that comes from keeping vigil over critically ill children. Lisa scanned the room until she spotted them, a man she recognized as Tommy's father sitting beside a woman who could only be his mother, their hands clasped together as they stared at the floor with hollow eyes. Alex Chun looked nothing like the billionaire technology mogul he actually was. His expensive suit had been replaced by rumpled khakis and a polo shirt that suggested he had dressed in haste. His usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and his face carried the haunted expression of a parent watching their child slip away. Beside him, his wife Elena clutched a tissue box, her elegant features ravaged by hours of crying. Lisa hesitated at the entrance to the waiting area, suddenly uncertain about her plan. These people had no idea who she was or why she was there. How could she possibly approach them with an offer that sounded like something from a medical thriller? Yet the transport container in her arms reminded her that she carried their son's potential salvation, and her hesitation dissolved into resolve. "Mr. and Mrs. Chun?" Lisa approached them carefully, her voice soft but confident. "My name is Lisa Martinez. I'm the crossing guard at Tommy's school, and I have something that might help your son." Alex looked up with tired eyes that struggled to focus on her face. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by confusion. "You're the lady who helps Tommy cross the street every morning. But what are you doing here? How did you know about—" "I donated blood for Tommy this afternoon," Lisa explained, sitting down beside them without invitation. The hospital where I work received an emergency request for O-negative blood, and I immediately volunteered. I had no idea at the time that the patient was Tommy, but when I found out, I knew I had to do everything possible to help. Elena's face crumpled as fresh tears began to flow. "You donated blood for our son? But the doctors said they couldn't use it because of some policy about approved vendors. They're still trying to locate blood from an authorized facility, but Tommy's condition is getting worse by the hour." Lisa felt her heart breaking for these parents who were trapped in the same bureaucratic nightmare that had driven her to take matters into her own hands. "That's why I'm here. I brought the blood with me, and I'm going to find a way to get it to Tommy, with or without the hospital's blessing." Alex straightened in his chair, his business instincts suddenly engaged despite his emotional state. "What do you mean? If the hospital won't accept the blood through normal channels, how do you plan to convince them otherwise?" "There's a pediatric specialist named Dr. Martinez who's been consulting on Tommy's case. He's not directly employed by this hospital, which means he might be willing to take medical responsibility for using my blood if he determines it's safe. It's risky for everyone involved, but it's Tommy's best chance." Elena grabbed Lisa's arm with surprising strength. "You would do that? Risk legal trouble and professional consequences for a child you barely know?" Lisa thought of Tommy's bright smile every morning, the way he always thanked her for helping him cross the street, the pure innocence in his eyes that reminded her why she had chosen a life dedicated to helping others. "Tommy waves at me every single day. He's not just some stranger, he's part of my community, part of my responsibility. I couldn't live with myself knowing I had the power to save his life, and chose not to use it." Before Alex could respond, Lisa's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Dr. Martinez was out of surgery and willing to meet with them in a private consultation room. The window of opportunity was narrow. Dr. Williams was attending a board meeting, but she would return within the hour, and if she discovered their plan, the consequences would be severe for everyone involved. "I need to go," Lisa said, standing abruptly. "Dr. Martinez is ready to see me. If he agrees to use the blood, Tommy could receive a transfusion within the next 30 minutes. Alex stood as well, his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had made him successful in the business world. "I'm coming with you. If there are medical decisions to be made about my son's treatment, I need to be involved." Elena rose on unsteady legs, her face pale but determined. "We both need to be there. Tommy is our responsibility, and if there are risks involved in this treatment, we need to understand them fully." Lisa realized that her simple plan to deliver blood to a sick child had evolved into something much more complex. She was now involving Tommy's parents in a scheme that could result in serious consequences for everyone involved. Yet looking at their faces, seeing the desperate hope mixed with parental love, she knew there was no turning back. The walk to the consultation room felt like a march toward an uncertain fate. Lisa carried the transport container with the reverence of someone bearing a sacred relic, while Alex and Elena flanked her like worried guards. They passed nurses who nodded respectfully at the Chen family, unaware that they were witnessing a moment that would either save a child's life or destroy several careers. Dr. Martinez was younger than Lisa had expected, probably in his early 40s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested he lived and breathed pediatric medicine. He stood as they entered the consultation room, his expression serious but not unfriendly. "Mr. and Mrs. Chun, I've been monitoring Tommy's condition closely, and I need to be honest with you about the situation. His blood count has dropped to critical levels, and without an immediate transfusion, we're looking at potential organ failure within the next few hours." Elena's knees buckled slightly, and Alex steadied her while his own face went ashen. "But surely there must be blood available somewhere in the city. This is Phoenix, not some remote rural area." Dr. Martinez consulted his tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be a list of medical facilities. "I've contacted every blood bank within a 50-mile radius. The Red Cross facility has O-negative blood, but their delivery truck broke down, and they can't get it here for at least 3 hours. University Medical Center has some, but they're dealing with their own emergency and can't spare any units. Phoenix General might have some available, but the paperwork and transport time would put us well beyond Tommy's critical window. Lisa stepped forward, placing the transport container on the consultation room table. That's where I come in, Dr. Martinez. This blood was donated specifically for Tommy this afternoon. It's been properly tested, stored, and transported according to all medical protocols. The only issue is that it comes from a facility that's not on this hospital's approved vendor list. Dr. Martinez opened the container and examined the blood bag, checking the labels and documentation with the thoroughness of someone whose career depended on attention to detail. The testing appears comprehensive, and the storage has been appropriate. From a purely medical standpoint, this blood is identical to what we would receive from any other facility. Then what's the problem? Alex demanded, his frustration boiling over. If the blood is safe and my son is dying, why are we even having this discussion? Because using this blood would violate hospital policy in a way that could end my medical career and expose everyone involved to serious legal liability. Dr. Martinez replied bluntly. If something went wrong, if Tommy had an unexpected reaction or if there were complications, the hospital would claim that I acted negligently by using unauthorized blood products. I could lose my medical license, face criminal charges, and certainly never work in pediatric medicine again. The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled over everyone present. Lisa realized that she had been naive in thinking that good intentions and medical necessity would be enough to overcome institutional barriers. The doctor was being asked to risk everything he had worked for to save one child, regardless of how noble the cause. Elena spoke first, her voice quiet but steady. Doctor, what would you do if Tommy were your son? Dr. Martinez looked at her for a long moment, and Lisa could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. If Tommy were my son, I would move heaven and earth to save him, regardless of the consequences to my career or my future. Then please, Elena continued, tears streaming down her face, treat him as if he were your own son. We'll take full responsibility for whatever happens. We'll sign any waiver, accept any liability, testify on your behalf if there are legal proceedings. Just please don't let our little boy die because of paperwork. Alex pulled out his phone and began scrolling through his contacts. I'll call my lawyers right now. We can have legal documents prepared within the hour that absolve you of any responsibility for using this blood. My company employs the best legal team in Arizona. They can create ironclad protection for everyone involved. Dr. Martinez held up his hand to stop him. Mr. Chun, I appreciate the offer, but legal documents won't protect me if the state medical board decides I acted outside acceptable standards of care. This decision has to be based on medical judgment, not legal maneuvering. Lisa watched this exchange with growing anxiety, realizing that her simple desire to help Tommy was evolving into a complex web of professional and legal considerations. She thought about Janet's warnings back at the blood bank, about the potential consequences of interfering with medical protocols. But then she thought about Tommy's smile, about the trust in his eyes every morning as she helped him safely cross the street. Dr. Martinez, Lisa said quietly, I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to risk your career for a stranger. I'm asking you to save the life of a little boy who trusts adults to protect him. Tommy waves at me every single morning with complete faith that the world is a safe place where people care about each other. If we let him die because we're too afraid to break rules that prioritize paperwork over human life, then we're betraying that trust in the worst possible way. The doctor studied her face, and Lisa could see him weighing medical ethics against institutional politics, career preservation against moral obligation. Miss Martinez, if I agree to this, you need to understand that we'll all be walking into uncharted territory. If Tommy has any kind of adverse reaction, if there are complications, that could be attributed to the blood source. All of us will face serious consequences. I understand, Lisa replied without hesitation. But I also understand that doing nothing guarantees Tommy will die. At least this way, he has a chance. Dr. Martinez looked at the Chen family, seeing the desperate hope in their eyes then. Back at the blood bag that represented both salvation and potential disaster. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded slowly. I'll need 15 minutes to run additional tests on the blood, just to be absolutely certain of its safety. If everything checks out, I'll administer the transfusion myself and take full medical responsibility for the decision. Elena collapsed into Alex's arms, sobbing with relief and terror in equal measure. Alex closed his eyes and held his wife tightly, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Lisa felt a surge of gratitude toward the doctor who was willing to risk everything to save Tommy's life, even as she realized that the next 15 minutes would determine whether she was Tommy's guardian angel or the person who destroyed several lives in the name of good intentions. As Dr. Martinez left to conduct his tests, Lisa sat in the consultation room with Tommy's parents, all of them united by the shared understanding that they had just crossed a line from which there might be no return. The next few hours would test everything they believed about justice, sacrifice, and the price of doing what's right when the system fails the people it's supposed to protect. Part 4. The revelation that changes everything. The transfusion had been successful. Tommy's color returned within an hour, his vital signs stabilized, and his parents wept with relief as they watched their son's chest rise and fall with steady, peaceful breaths. Dr. Martinez had performed a medical miracle, not through advanced technology or experimental procedures, but through the simple act of refusing to let bureaucracy triumph over humanity. Lisa stood at the window of Tommy's hospital room, watching the boy sleep while machines monitored his recovery. The late evening sun cast long shadows across the pediatric ward, and she felt a profound sense of completion, as if a circle that had been broken that morning was finally whole again. She had given her blood to save a life, and despite all the obstacles and complications, that blood was now flowing through Tommy's veins, carrying oxygen and hope to every cell in his small body. Elena Chun approached quietly, her eyes still, red from crying but her face radiant with gratitude. Miss Martinez, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. You risked everything for our son, and I want you to know that we'll never forget it. Lisa turned from the window, embarrassed by the praise. I just did what anyone would do. Tommy needed help, and I was able to provide it. I'm just grateful that Dr. Martinez was willing to take the medical risk. That's where you're wrong. Elena said softly. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people would have accepted the hospital's refusal and moved on with their lives. You chose to fight for a child you barely knew, even when it meant breaking rules and risking serious consequences. Alex Chun had been making phone calls in the hallway, his voice low but urgent as he spoke with what sounded like lawyers and business associates. Now he entered the room with a strange expression on his face, part relief and part something else that Lisa couldn't quite identify. The hospital administration is asking questions, Alex said quietly. Dr. Williams finished her board meeting and discovered that Tommy received a transfusion from an unauthorized source. She's demanding a full investigation into how the blood was obtained and who authorized its use. Lisa felt her stomach drop. She had known this moment would come, the aftermath when bureaucratic systems reasserted their authority and demanded accountability for rule-breaking. What does that mean for Dr. Martinez? Will he lose his medical license? Alex's expression was unreadable. That depends on several factors: hospital politics, media attention, legal maneuvering, and whether someone with enough influence decides to intervene on his behalf. Elena looked at her husband with curiosity. Alex, what aren't you telling us? You've been making phone calls for the past hour, and you have that look you get when you're planning something. Alex was quiet for a long moment, studying Lisa's face as if trying to make a difficult decision. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed disproportionate to the situation. Miss Martinez, before we go any further, I need to tell you something about who I am and why your decision to help Tommy was more significant than you could possibly imagine. Lisa frowned, confused by the sudden shift in Alex's demeanor. I don't understand. You're Tommy's father, and you work in technology. What else is there to know? Alex pulled out his phone and showed Lisa a web page. Her eyes widened as she read the headline, "Tech mogul Alex Chun's company achieves record quarterly profits." Below the headline was a photo of Alex standing in front of a gleaming corporate headquarters, looking every inch the billionaire businessman he apparently was. "I'm the founder and CEO of Chen Technologies," Alex said quietly. "My company develops software and hardware solutions for medical devices, and we've been working on revolutionary blood analysis and storage systems. Our annual revenue last year was just over $3 billion. Lisa stared at the phone screen, then back at Alex's face, struggling to reconcile the worried father she had met with the powerful executive described in the article. "But you drive a Honda sedan. You picked Tommy up from school like any other parent. I never saw any signs that you were wealthy," Alex finished with a slight smile. "Elena and I made a conscious decision to raise Tommy as normally as possible. We live in a nice house, but not a mansion. I drive a modest car and dress like a regular person when I'm not at corporate functions. We wanted Tommy to understand the value of money and hard work, not grow up entitled and disconnected from real people." Elena took Lisa's hand gently. "What Alex is trying to tell you is that your decision to help Tommy wasn't just about saving the life of a random child. You risked everything to help the son of someone who has the resources to ensure that your sacrifice doesn't go unrecognized." Lisa felt overwhelmed, her mind racing to process this revelation. The quiet man she had occasionally seen at school pickup was one of the most powerful businessmen in Arizona, possibly the country. The modest family she had assumed lived paycheck to paycheck like herself actually had access to wealth beyond her imagination. "I don't want recognition," Lisa said finally. "I didn't help Tommy because I thought I'd get something in return. I helped him because it was the right thing to do." Alex nodded approvingly. "And that's exactly why what happens next is so important. Miss Martinez, in the past 4 hours, I've made some phone calls. By tomorrow morning, Dr. Williams will discover that Desert Valley Medical Center is being considered for a $50 million expansion project funded by the Chen Foundation. She also learned that the foundation takes a very dim view of medical professionals who prioritize paperwork over patient care." Lisa's breath caught. "Mr. Chen, you don't need to do that. Dr. Martinez made his own decision to help Tommy. I don't want anyone to get in trouble because of what I did." "That's not your choice to make anymore," Alex replied firmly. "Dr. Martinez risked his career to save my son's life. The hospital administration tried to let Tommy die because of bureaucratic nonsense. There need to be consequences for both kinds of behavior." Elena squeezed Lisa's hand more tightly. "Lisa, Alex has also been researching your background. We know about your work at the blood bank, your job as a crossing guard, your volunteer work at the homeless shelter on weekends. We know that you've been living paycheck to paycheck while dedicating your life to helping others." Lisa felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. "Mrs. Chun, my financial situation is my own responsibility. I chose jobs that let me help people instead of jobs that pay well. I don't regret those choices, and we don't want you to regret them," Alex said. "But we also don't want someone with your character and dedication to struggle financially when we have the power to change that situation." Alex pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, the same kind of expensive stationery that Lisa associated with legal documents or official business correspondence. This is a check for $500,000. It's not payment for what you did. You can't put a price on saving someone's life. It's recognition that someone who risks everything to help others deserves to have their own life transformed in return. Lisa stared at the envelope as if it contained a live snake. $500,000 was more money than she could spend. In a lifetime, enough to change every aspect of her existence. She could quit her multiple part-time jobs, go back to school, travel the world, buy a house. Possibilities that had never seemed realistic suddenly became attainable. "I can't accept this," she said quietly. "It's too much. I helped Tommy because he needed help, not because I expected a reward." Elena smiled through fresh tears. "That's exactly why you deserve it. Lisa, in Alex's business world, people do favors for each other all the time, expecting something in return. Politicians, executives, investors, they all operate on a system of mutual benefit and calculated generosity. But what you did was pure. You saw a child in need and acted without any thought of personal gain." Alex leaned forward in his chair, his voice taking on the passionate intensity that had made him successful in business. "Miss Martinez, I've spent the last 15 years building a company worth billions of dollars. I employ over 10,000 people worldwide, and our products improve healthcare for millions of patients. But today, I was reminded that all the money and power in the world is meaningless if you can't use it to protect the people you love." He gestured toward Tommy's sleeping form. "That little boy is my entire world. When he collapsed at school, today when the doctors said his blood count was critically low, I felt more helpless than I've ever felt in my life. All my wealth and influence couldn't make blood appear from nowhere, or force doctors to ignore their protocols." Lisa looked at Tommy, who slept peacefully with no knowledge of the complex adult world swirling around him. Tomorrow he would wake up expecting to go to school, to wave at the crossing guard who helped him safely navigate the busy street, to live the innocent life of a child who trusted that adults would protect him. "You gave me back my son," Alex continued, his voice breaking slightly. "You risked your career, your legal standing, your financial security, everything you had to help a child you barely knew. The money is just the beginning of how we plan to express our gratitude." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out another document, this one bearing the letterhead of a prestigious law firm. "We've also had our attorneys establish the Lisa Martinez Foundation for Emergency Medical Assistance. It's being funded with an initial endowment of $10 million, and its mission is to provide immediate financial support for blood banks and medical facilities that serve underserved communities." Lisa felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the scope of what the Chuns were offering. The foundation bearing her name would have the resources to prevent other children from facing the bureaucratic obstacles that had nearly cost Tommy his life. Small blood banks like Riverside Community would never again have to watch patients suffer because their facilities weren't considered prestigious enough for major hospitals. "Furthermore," Alex added, consulting his phone, "we'd like you to consider serving as the foundation's executive director. It would be a full-time position with a salary that reflects the importance of the work, plus benefits and the resources to hire a staff of medical and administrative professionals." Lisa's mind reeled as she tried to process what was being offered. In the span of a single day, she had gone from struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment to being offered wealth beyond her dreams and the opportunity to head a foundation that could save lives on a scale she had never imagined. "This is incredible," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need time to think about all of this. It's so much more than I ever expected or dreamed possible." Alex smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness she had seen from him since arriving at the hospital. "Take all the time you need. The foundation will be there when you're ready, and the money is yours regardless of what you decide about." The job. Elena and I just want you to know that your kindness today has created ripple effects that will extend far beyond Tommy's recovery. Elena stood and walked to Tommy's bedside, gently stroking his hair as he slept. You know, Lisa, when Alex first told me about his plan to raise Tommy without the trappings of wealth, I worried that we were depriving our son of opportunities. But today I realize that growing up in a normal neighborhood, attending public school, having a crossing guard who cares about his safety, these experiences taught Tommy to trust in the kindness of ordinary people. That trust is what brought you into our lives when we needed you most. Lisa looked around the hospital room, at the sleeping child whose life she had helped save, at the parents whose gratitude was transforming her own existence in ways she was still struggling to comprehend. 12 hours ago, she had been a part-time blood bank worker and crossing guard living paycheck to paycheck. Now she was being offered the chance to run a foundation dedicated to ensuring that no child would ever again be denied medical care because of bureaucratic red tape. The evening stars were beginning to appear outside Tommy's window, and Lisa realized that she was witnessing more than just a child's recovery. She was seeing the birth of something larger, a foundation that would carry her values of compassion and direct action into communities across the country, ensuring that other families would never face the obstacles that had nearly cost Tommy his life. As she held the envelope containing more money than she had ever imagined possessing, Lisa understood that her decision to donate blood that afternoon had set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just her own life, but the lives of countless others who would benefit from the foundation's work. The invisible thread her grandmother had spoken of hadn't just connected her to Tommy, it had woven her into a network of possibility that stretched far beyond anything she could have imagined when she rolled up her sleeve and offered to help save a stranger's life. Part 5. A New Beginning. 6 months later, Lisa stood in the gleaming lobby of the Lisa Martinez Foundation headquarters, watching as families streamed through the doors, seeking assistance with medical emergencies that traditional healthcare systems had failed to address. The building itself was a testament to what could be accomplished when compassion met resources, modern but welcoming, efficient but human-centered, a place where bureaucracy took a backseat to healing. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the desert landscape of Phoenix stretching toward the mountains, but her attention was drawn to the activity inside. A young mother clutched paperwork while speaking urgently with one of the foundation's intake coordinators. An elderly man sat patiently in a wheelchair, waiting for approval of emergency funds to cover a medication his insurance had denied. These were the people Lisa had dedicated her new life to, serving individuals caught between medical necessity and institutional indifference. "Lisa, the Chun family is here for the ribbon cutting," announced Mark Stevens, the foundation's operations director who had previously served as Alex Chun's personal assistant. His transition from corporate support to humanitarian work had been seamless, driven by the same dedication to excellence that had made him invaluable in the business world. Lisa smoothed her professional dress, still occasionally surprised by her transformation from part-time worker to foundation executive. The change hadn't been just financial, though the security of a substantial salary had certainly improved her quality of life, but philosophical. She now operated with the resources and authority to address systemic problems rather than simply treating their symptoms. Alex and Elena Chun entered the lobby with Tommy between them, the boy now fully recovered and radiating the boundless energy of a healthy 9-year-old. He spotted Lisa immediately and ran toward her with the same enthusiasm he had once shown crossing the street to school. "Miss Lisa, Mom said you built this whole place to help sick kids like me." Lisa knelt to Tommy's eye level, marveling at how normal he appeared after the life-threatening crisis that had brought them all together. "Not just me, Tommy. This foundation exists because your parents believe that what happened to you should never happen to another child. We're here to make sure that when kids get sick, the grown-ups have everything they need to make them better." Elena approached with tears in her eyes, as she often did when witnessing the foundation's work. "Lisa, what you've accomplished in just 6 months is remarkable. The emergency response program has already helped over 300 families, and the Blood Bank Partnership Initiative has eliminated supply shortages in 12 rural communities." The foundation's success had exceeded everyone's expectations. Lisa's combination of grassroots experience and genuine passion for helping others had attracted talented professionals from across the medical and nonprofit sectors. They had developed innovative programs that bridged the gap between immediate emergency assistance and long-term systemic reform. Alex surveyed the bustling lobby with evident pride. "You know, when I first made my fortune, I thought success was measured in quarterly profits and market share. But watching families leave here with solutions to problems that seemed impossible, that's a different kind of achievement entirely." Dr. Martinez appeared from one of the consultation rooms, his white coat bearing the foundation's logo rather than a hospital's corporate branding. His decision to leave Desert Valley Medical Center had been vindicated by the meaningful work he now performed as the foundation's chief medical officer. "Lisa, we just approved emergency funding for a bone marrow match program in rural Montana. A 12-year-old girl there was facing the same bureaucratic obstacles that nearly cost Tommy his life. Thanks to our intervention, she received treatment at the Mayo Clinic next week." The satisfaction Lisa felt at such news never diminished. Each success story represented not just an individual life saved, but validation of the principle that had driven her actions that day at the blood bank, that human need should always take precedence over institutional convenience. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Lisa reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The scared woman who had sat in her car outside Desert Valley Medical Center, uncertain whether she should risk everything to help a dying child, had evolved into someone with the confidence and resources to challenge systems that failed vulnerable people. Tommy insisted on helping cut the ribbon, his small hands gripping the oversized scissors alongside Lisa's. The gathered crowd of donors, medical professionals, and community leaders applauded as the ceremonial barrier fell away, officially opening the foundation's new emergency response wing. "This facility represents more than expanded services," Lisa addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the conviction that had transformed her from crossing guard to foundation leader. "It represents our commitment to the idea that medical care should be a human right, not a privilege reserved for those who can navigate complex bureaucracies or afford premium services." After the ceremony, as the crowds dispersed and the building settled into its regular rhythm of activity, Lisa found herself alone in her office, overlooking the Phoenix skyline. The walls were decorated not with corporate awards or academic degrees, but with thank you letters from families the foundation had helped and photos of children whose lives had been saved through their interventions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janet at Riverside Community Blood Bank, where Lisa still volunteered on weekends. Another emergency request came in: premature twins need rare blood type. Foundation partnership means we can respond immediately instead of watching helplessly. Thank you for changing everything. Lisa smiled as she typed her response, remembering the frustration and helplessness she had felt during those crucial hours when Tommy's life hung in the balance. The foundation had systematically eliminated the barriers that created such agonizing delays, establishing rapid response protocols that prioritized medical necessity over administrative compliance. As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lisa prepared to leave for the day. Tomorrow would bring new emergencies, new families in crisis, new opportunities to prove that compassion and resources could overcome even the most entrenched institutional obstacles. Walking through the lobby one final time, she paused at the donor recognition wall where Alex and Elena Chun's names occupied a place of honor among hundreds of supporters who had embraced the foundation's mission. But it was the small plaque near the entrance that always caught her attention. In memory of all those whose lives were lost to bureaucratic indifference, and in celebration of those who refuse to accept that systems matter more than people. Outside, her car, no longer the aging Honda Civic, but a reliable vehicle that reflected her changed circumstances, waited in the employee parking area. As she drove home to her comfortable apartment in a safe neighborhood, Lisa reflected on how profoundly her life had been transformed by a single decision to roll up her sleeve and offer help to a stranger. The foundation had become more than a job or even a calling. It was proof that individual acts of courage could create institutional change, that one person's refusal to accept injustice could ripple outward to benefit thousands. Tommy Chun's life had been saved not just by her blood donation, but by her unwillingness to let bureaucratic barriers determine a child's fate. As she pulled into her driveway, Lisa's phone displayed a reminder about tomorrow's schedule: morning meetings with hospital administrators, afternoon visits to rural clinics, evening review of emergency grant applications. It was demanding work, but every day brought fresh evidence that the foundation was fulfilling its promise to ensure that no family would ever again watch their child suffer because the right kind of help wasn't available from the right kind. A facility. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.